They paid him to watch a stolen Apache girl. But the moment Marcus Holt saw her locked in that iron box, he knew everything he'd become disgusted him. Before we begin, drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I want to know who's here with me for this. The box wasn't even big enough to stand in. Marcus saw it from 50 yards away. A metal crate, 6 feet by 6 feet, sitting in the middle of a dried riverbed like something discarded. The sun hammered down on it, turning the iron into a furnace. He could see heat waves rising off the surface, shimmering in the Wyoming air. His horse picked its way through the cracked mud. Marcus's throat was dry. Not from thirst, from something else. Something that felt like shame trying to claw its way back into a man who'd spent 5 years burying it. "You're late." The voice belonged to Vincent Caro, a thick-necked man with hands that looked like they'd strangled things for sport. He stood in the shade of a canvas tarp strung between 2 cottonwood trees, drinking water from a tin cup while the girl baked in the box. Marcus dismounted slowly. Trail was washed out. Trail's always washed out. Caro set down his cup and walked toward Marcus with the swagger of a man who'd never been held accountable for anything. "You understand what you're doing here? You said guard duty, 3 days, $400. That's right." Caro pulled a folded paper from his vest. "And this," he shook it open, "is why it's worth that much." Marcus took the paper. His stomach turned as he read. "Witness the savage Apache prophetess. She claims to speak with spirits. She murdered 3 Christian missionaries. See her before she hangs." "She's 11 years old," Marcus said, his voice flat. "She's a killer." Caro's smile was ugly. "And people will pay good money to see her. We've got exhibitions lined up from Cheyenne to St. Louis, church groups, school tours, civic societies. Everyone wants to see the demon child who slaughtered God's servants." Marcus looked past Caro to the iron box. Through the narrow slits cut for ventilation, he could see movement. A small hand pressed against the metal, fingers splayed. Then it jerked back. The iron was too hot to touch. "She giving you any trouble?" Marcus heard himself ask. "Not anymore." Caro walked to the box and kicked it. The sound rang out across the empty riverbed. First day she screamed, second day she cried. Today she's been quiet. That's progress. Something cold slid down Marcus's spine. "When do your men come back?" "Tomorrow at sundown. Then we move her to the first exhibition." Caro handed Marcus a key. "Food and water are under the tarp. Give her half a canteen twice a day. Don't give her more. We can't have her too comfortable. People paid for savage, not civilized." Marcus felt the key's weight in his palm. What did she actually do? Does it matter? It shouldn't have. Marcus had stopped asking questions like that 3 years ago, after his farm failed and his wife left and the bank took everything. He'd learned that survival required compromise. That conscience was a luxury for men who weren't desperate. But standing in that dried riverbed with the sun beating down and that child locked in a metal box, Marcus Holt felt something he thought he'd killed. He felt human. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It matters." Caro's eyes narrowed. Those missionaries came to her village offering salvation. She told them they weren't welcome. When they insisted, he paused. She did something. The survivors said she cursed them, said evil words that made them sick. 3 of them died within a week. So she used words. She's a witch, Holt, a demon, and we're going to make a fortune showing her off before they hang her. Caro mounted his horse. "My men will be back tomorrow. Keep her alive. Keep her contained, and don't let her talk to you. These Apache girls, they get in your head. Make you think things that aren't true." He rode off, leaving Marcus alone with the box. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus stood there for a full minute, staring at the iron crate. Heat radiated off it in waves. Inside, the child hadn't made a sound since Caro left. He walked closer, slowly, like approaching something wild. Through the ventilation slits, he could see her now. She sat in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest, her dark hair plastered to her face with sweat. Her dress, what remained of it, was torn and stained with dust and blood. But her eyes, God, her eyes. They were the eyes of someone who'd already decided how this story ended. Not with hope, not with rescue, just with endurance until it was finally over. Marcus crouched down, bringing himself level with the slits. "I'm going to give you water." She didn't respond, didn't even look at him. He unlocked the box with shaking hands. The door swung open with a screech of rusted hinges. The smell that came out, sweat and fear and human waste, made him turn his head. When he looked back, she was watching him. "You're going to hurt me now," she said in English. Her voice was hoarse but clear, like the others did. "No." Marcus grabbed the canteen from under the tarp. "I'm going to give you water, then food, then..." He paused, not knowing what came after. "Then..." She studied him with those ancient eyes trapped in a child's face. "You're different from him." "I'm not." "Yes." She took the canteen when he offered it, drinking carefully, making it last. "You feel shame." He doesn't. Shame means there's something left to save. The words hit Marcus like a fist. He sat back on his heels, staring at this child who'd just seen through 5 years of carefully constructed emotional armor in 30 seconds. "What's your name?" he asked. "Does it matter?" She echoed Caro's words back at him. "To you, I'm cargo. Merchandise. Something to guard until they come back and turn me into a circus attraction." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Your name matters to me." She tilted her head, considering. Then, "Tallulah. It means leaping water in my language. My mother gave it to me because I was born during the spring floods." "Where's your mother now?" "Dead. They killed her when they took me." No emotion in her voice, just fact. "My father too. My brother. My grandmother. Everyone who would have fought for me." The sun climbed higher. Somewhere overhead, a hawk circled. Marcus should have locked her back in the box, should have followed Caro's instructions, should have treated this like every other job, just another compromise on the road to survival. Instead, he asked the question that would change everything. What really happened with those missionaries? Tallulah's fingers traced patterns in the dust inside the box. She didn't answer immediately, and Marcus didn't push. He'd learned something about silence during his years of failure. Sometimes it told you more than words ever could. The patterns she drew looked like symbols, birds maybe, or spirits. Marcus couldn't tell. "They came to our village in winter," she finally said. 3 men with black books and white collars. "They said they wanted to save our souls from darkness." She looked up at him, and Marcus saw something that made his chest tighten. Not anger, but something worse. Pity. Like she felt sorry for him having to hear this. "My grandmother was our medicine woman. She knew plants, healing songs, the old ways. When people got sick, she made them better. Not always." Tallulah's voice cracked slightly, but more often than not. The missionaries said her healing was devil's work. "Yes." Tallulah picked up a small stone from the floor of the box, rolling it between her fingers. "They said only their God could heal. Only their prayers mattered. They told my grandmother to stop practicing her medicine, to burn her herbs and her songs and convert." Marcus could already see where this was going. She refused. She laughed at them. For the first time, something like a smile touched Tallulah's face. She told them their God was welcome to visit, but he'd have to share space with ours. That made them very angry. The hawk overhead let out a cry, sharp and cutting. They started preaching in our village every day, Tallulah continued, standing in the center, telling everyone we were damned, that our children would burn, that our ancestors were suffering. Some of the younger people, they got scared, started listening. She set down the stone and looked at Marcus directly. Then the winter fever came. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The missionaries? No, just sickness. It happens sometimes. Tallulah's voice was matter-of-fact. My grandmother tried to help. She made her medicines, sang her songs. Some people got better, some didn't. But the missionaries blamed her. They said she was making people sick with her devil magic. Said the fever was punishment for not accepting their God. Tallulah's hands clenched into small fists. One of the men who died, he was 7 years old. His name was Chaska. He was my friend. Marcus had to look away. The sun was turning the iron box into a furnace again, but Tallulah didn't seem to notice. After Chaska died, the missionaries came to my grandmother's lodge. They said if she didn't stop her practices, they'd tell the soldiers we were hostile, that they'd bring the army to pacify us. Your grandmother kept healing anyway. Of course, there was pride in Tallulah's voice now. She said she'd rather die doing what was right than live doing what was wrong. The words echoed in the dried riverbed. Marcus thought about his own compromises, his own survival-at-any-cost philosophy, wondered when he'd stopped believing in doing what was right. The missionaries got sick 2 weeks later, Tallulah said quietly. All 3 of them. Same fever that had killed Chaska and the others. My grandmother tried to help them too, even after everything they'd said, everything they'd threatened. She gave them the same medicines she gave our people. They refused treatment. They said they'd rather die than accept help from a witch. Tallulah's voice was hollow now. So they did. 3 days later, all 3 were dead. Marcus sat back, the full picture coming into focus like a photograph developing in chemicals. And they blamed you. The surviving missionaries, the ones who stayed in the nearby fort. They said I'd cursed the 3 who died, that I'd spoken evil words that poisoned their blood. She laughed, bitter and sharp. I was 10 years old. The only words I spoke to them were, "Please leave my grandmother alone." But that didn't matter. No. Tallulah looked at him with those 2 old eyes. They needed someone to blame. A child witch makes a better story than 3 men who died because they were too proud to accept help from someone they thought was beneath them. The truth sat between them like a third presence. Marcus thought about the exhibition poster, about people paying to see the demon child who murdered missionaries, about Caro and his men making money off a lie while this girl rotted in a metal box. What happened after they died? He asked, though he already knew it would be bad. Soldiers came. Tallulah's voice went flat. They said our village was harboring a murderer. They demanded we turn over the witch child. My father refused, said they'd have to kill him first. She picked up the stone again, studying it like it held answers. So they did. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. They killed my father in front of me, shot him while he stood between me and their rifles. Then my mother tried to fight them. They clubbed her down. My brother ran. Her voice caught. They shot him in the back. The stone fell from her fingers, landing in the dust, with a soft sound. My grandmother made me run. Told me to hide in the river reeds. I watched from there as they burned our village. Watched as they killed everyone too slow to escape. When it was over, they found me. Caro and his men. They were with the soldiers, looking for survivors to sell. To sell, Marcus repeated, the words tasting like poison. Indian attractions are profitable. Tallulah quoted what she'd obviously heard. Especially ones with good stories. A child witch who killed missionaries, That's worth more than a regular captive." She looked at him again, and this time Marcus saw something that made him want to put his fist through the iron box. She was resigned. Not fighting anymore, not hoping for rescue or justice or mercy. Just enduring until they finally killed her, or she died in this box. "How long have you been in here?" Marcus asked. 4 days. They move the box each night, so I don't know where I am. Can't escape even if I got out. She pulled her knees back to her chest. "Tomorrow they take me to the first exhibition. After that," she shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe I last a month. Maybe a year. Eventually someone will decide I'm more valuable dead than alive. A martyr's more profitable than a prisoner." The sun beat down. The heat was murderous now, turning the air into something solid. Marcus should have locked the box, should have walked away, should have remembered that $400 was more than he'd made in the last 6 months combined. Instead, he stood up and made a decision that would cost him everything. "No," he said quietly. Tallulah looked up, confused. "No what?" "No, that's not how this ends." Marcus grabbed the canteen and the food supplies from under the tarp. "You're not getting in that box again. And tomorrow when Caro comes back, he's going to find you gone." For the first time since he'd met her, Tallulah looked like a child. Shocked, uncertain, almost afraid to hope. "You can't," she said. "They'll kill you." "Probably." Marcus began gathering supplies, water, dried meat, a blanket. "But I can live with that. I can't live with putting you back in that box." "Why?" The question was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this for me?" Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, saw the bruises on her arms, the burns from the hot iron, the resignation in eyes that should have been full of games and laughter. "Because you were right," he said. "I feel shame, and I'm done pretending that doesn't matter." He pulled his knife and began cutting through the ropes that Caro had left to bind her if she tried to escape. Tallulah watched him work, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her face. "What will you do?" she asked. "Buy you time." Marcus finished with the ropes and moved to check the horses. "Give you supplies and point you north. There's a Apache camp 3 days' ride from here. If you can make it that far, you'll be safe." "And you?" Marcus didn't answer. They both knew what happened to men who freed valuable prisoners. But as he helped Tallulah out of that iron box, as he watched her stand in the sun for the first time in 4 days and tilt her face to the sky like she was drinking light, Marcus Holt understood something he'd forgotten. Some things were worth dying for, and some debts could only be paid in blood. Night came to the riverbed like ink spilling across paper. Marcus built a small fire, small enough not to be seen from a distance, big enough to cook the dried meat he'd found in Caro's supplies. Tallulah sat across from him, wrapped in a blanket, eating slowly. She'd barely said 20 words since he'd freed her. "You should have left an hour ago," Marcus said, not looking up from the fire. "Every minute you stay, you risk them coming back early." "They won't come back until tomorrow." Tallulah's voice was quiet but certain. "Caro has a meeting in Rawlins tonight, selling contracts for the exhibition tour. He told his men he'd be back at sundown tomorrow." "How do you know that?" "Because they talk like I'm not there, like I'm deaf, or stupid, or not human enough to understand English." She pulled the blanket tighter. "You learn a lot when people think you can't hear them." Marcus fed another stick to the fire. "What else did you learn?" "That you're supposed to die." Tallulah said it matter-of-factly. "Caro doesn't trust you, thinks you might have a conscience. Told his men if you caused problems, they should kill you and find someone else." The wood crackled. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called out. "Well," Marcus said, "at least he was right about the conscience part." Tallulah almost smiled. Almost. "Why did you take this job?" she asked. "If you have shame, if you feel things, why agree to guard a child in a box?" It was a fair question. Marcus had been asking himself the same thing. 5 years ago I had a farm, he said slowly. 50 acres in Montana. Wife named Catherine. We were going to have children, build something that mattered. He poked at the fire. Then the drought came. 3 years straight. Crops failed. Animals died. I borrowed money I couldn't pay back. The bank took everything. Worse, the bank gave me a choice: work off the debt or go to prison, so I worked. Took jobs I'd never have considered before, each one a little worse than the last, each one requiring me to ignore a little more of what I used to believe in. He looked up at Tallulah. By the time I took Caro's offer, I'd convinced myself I was past caring, that money was money, and right and wrong were luxuries I couldn't afford. What changed? You. Marcus felt something tighten in his throat. I saw you in that box and realized I'd become exactly what I used to hate. The kind of man who looks away because it's easier, who tells himself that one person can't change anything, so why try? Tallulah was quiet for a long moment. Then, my grandmother used to say that shame is the soul's way of remembering who you really are. Smart woman. She was. Tallulah's eyes reflected firelight. She also said that choosing courage once doesn't erase choosing cowardice before, but it's a start. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected, because she was right. Freeing one girl didn't undo 5 years of moral compromise, didn't bring back his farm or his wife or the man he used to be. But it was something. A first step away from the person he'd become. "You need to leave at first light," he said, changing the subject before the emotion could choke him. "Follow the river north until it splits. Take the eastern fork. In 2 days you'll hit the grasslands. Stay in the tall grass during daylight, travel at dusk. On the 3rd day you'll see the Three Sisters Peaks. Head straight for them. The Apache camp is in the valley beyond." Tallulah nodded, memorizing every detail. "What will you do?" "Stay here. When Caro comes back, I'll tell him you escaped during the night, that I tried to stop you, but you..." He paused, thinking. "You had help. Other Apache warriors. I'll make up something believable." "He won't believe you." "Probably not." Marcus pulled his revolver, checking the cylinder. "But it'll buy you more time. They'll waste hours deciding whether to chase you or deal with me first. They'll kill you." "Like I said, probably." Tallulah stared at him across the fire. In the flickering light, she looked even younger than 11. Looked like someone who should be worrying about lessons and games, not survival and death. "I don't want you to die for me," she said softly. "I'm not dying for you." Marcus set down the revolver. "I'm dying for me, for the man I used to be. The one who believed some things mattered more than survival." "That's still dying." "Yeah, but at least it means something." They sat in silence. The fire burned low. Above them, stars emerged like witnesses. Finally, Tallulah spoke again. "If you die tomorrow and I live, what should I tell people about you?" Marcus had to think about that. "Tell them..." He stopped, started again. "Tell them Marcus Holt remembered at the end what it meant to be human." "That's all?" "That's everything." Tallulah stood, walking around the fire to sit beside him. She was so small, her head barely reached his shoulder, but when she spoke, her voice carried weight that had nothing to do with size. "In my culture, when someone saves your life, you're bound to them. Connected. Their honor becomes your honor. Their story becomes part of your story." She looked up at him. "If I survive, I'll carry you with me. I'll tell everyone what you did, and maybe..." She paused. "Maybe that'll be enough to start erasing those 5 years." Marcus felt something break loose in his chest, something he'd kept locked tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. He was crying, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face, catching firelight as they fell. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me who I used to be." They sat there together as the fire died, and the night deepened, and somewhere in the distance, horses were already heading their way. But Marcus Holt didn't know that yet. For one perfect moment, he felt clean, whole. Like maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing differently in the present. And if that choice cost him everything, well, some prices were worth paying. Dawn came too fast. Marcus had hoped for more time, had told himself that Caro would stick to his sundown schedule, that he'd have a full day to get Tallulah moving north before anyone came looking. But the sound of horses woke him 2 hours after sunrise, coming from the south, moving fast. "Go!" Marcus was on his feet instantly, grabbing supplies. "Now! Don't stop! Don't look back!" Tallulah was already moving, years of survival instinct kicking in. She took the canteen, the food, the blanket he shoved at her. Her eyes were wide but focused. "The northern trail, I remember." She grabbed his hand briefly. Her fingers were small and cold. "Marcus Holt, I'll remember." Then she ran. Marcus watched her disappear into the river reeds, her small form swallowed by the tall grass. The morning sun turned everything gold and silver, beautiful in a way that felt like mockery. He checked his revolver. 6 bullets. 4 men coming. The math wasn't good. Caro and his men appeared 5 minutes later, riding hard into the dried riverbed. The moment they saw the empty box, Caro's face went purple with rage. "Where is she?" Marcus stood his ground, hands loose at his sides. His revolver was holstered but accessible. "Gone." "Gone?" Caro dismounted, his hand already on his pistol. "Gone where, Holt?" "North. Got away during the night." Marcus kept his voice steady. "I tried to stop her, but she had help. Other Apache. They came just before dawn, cut her loose." It was a weak lie. Marcus knew it. Caro knew it. "You're telling me?" Caro's voice was dangerously quiet. "That Apache warriors snuck into our camp, freed the girl, and you just stood there? I'm telling you I was outnumbered. You're telling me you're a traitor." Caro drew his pistol. "You let her go. Don't know why. Don't care. But you're going to tell me which direction she went, and then you're going to pray I'm feeling merciful." Marcus said nothing. "Talk, Holt." "No." The word hung in the air like smoke. Caro's 3 men spread out, flanking Marcus on both sides, surrounding him, cutting off any escape route. "You understand what you're throwing away?" Caro's laugh was ugly. $400, clean record, your life. For what? Some Indian girl you'll never see again? For myself. Marcus felt strangely calm, like he'd already made peace with how this ended. For the man I used to be. Noble, Caro spat in the dust. And stupid. Boys, make him talk. They came at him together. Marcus got his revolver up, fired twice. One of Caro's men went down screaming, clutching his leg. The other dodged, returning fire. Bullets whined past Marcus's head, so close he felt the air displacement. He dove behind the iron box, the same box that had held Tallulah. The irony wasn't lost on him. "He's pinned," one of the men shouted. Marcus fired again through the ventilation slits, heard someone curse, heard horses stamping nervously. His hands were steady, but his heart was trying to punch through his ribs. 3 bullets left. 4 men. Still bad math. "Holt!" Caro's voice echoed off the canyon walls. "Last chance. Tell us where she went and we'll make it quick. Keep your mouth shut and we'll make it last days." Marcus thought about Tallulah. Hoped she was miles away by now. Hoped she'd make it to those mountains, to that valley. to her people, hoped his choice mattered. He stood up from behind the box, revolver raised. She went north. He lied. Tallulah had actually gone northeast. Straight up the riverbed. You ride hard, you might catch her by noon. Caro studied him for a long moment, then smiled. You're lying. But that's okay. We'll find her eventually. And when we do, he raised his pistol. I'll make sure she knows what it cost you. The shot rang out across the empty riverbed, but it didn't come from Caro's gun. It came from the ridge above them. One of Caro's men dropped like a stone, a hole in his chest. Then another shot. Caro dove for cover as the bullet kicked up dust where he'd been standing. Marcus spun around, trying to see who was shooting. There, on the ridge, silhouettes against the rising sun. 6 riders. The morning light made it impossible to make out details, but Marcus could see rifles. Could hear more shots echoing down into the riverbed. Federal marshals, a voice boomed down. Drop your weapons, now. Marcus felt reality tilt sideways. Caro and his remaining man didn't drop their weapons. They ran for their horses. More shots followed them, kicking up dust, herding them away from escape routes. Within 30 seconds, they were pinned down behind a pile of river rocks, trapped. The riders came down into the riverbed. 6 men with badges and rifles, and the hard faces of people who'd seen too much and stopped being surprised by human cruelty. The lead marshal was a lean man in his 50s, gray hair beneath his hat, eyes that missed nothing. He surveyed the scene. The empty iron box, the wounded men, the weapons, the desperation. His gaze settled on Marcus. You Holt? Yes, sir. You the one who sent the telegraph? Marcus felt his brain stutter. What? The marshal pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Telegraph came into Rollins 3 days ago. Anonymous tip about human trafficking. Said Vincent Caro was transporting a Apache child for exhibition purposes. Said we'd better move fast, if we wanted to stop it. He looked at Marcus. That wasn't you? No, I didn't. Marcus stopped, felt something like hope crack through his chest. The girl. Tallulah, she must have. She got to a telegraph office. The marshal raised an eyebrow. Impressive. Most prisoners don't manage that. Marcus remembered what Tallulah had said. They talk like I'm not there. She'd learned when Caro's meeting in Rollins was, had probably heard about the telegraph office in town, had somehow, impossibly, gotten a message out. Where's the child now? The marshal asked. Marcus made a choice. For the second time in 12 hours, he chose truth. Gone. I freed her, gave her supplies and directions to a Apache camp up north. She left at dawn. The marshal studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Good? Caro screamed from behind the rocks. He's a criminal. He freed my property. Your property? The marshal's voice went cold as February. Indians aren't property, Caro. And children definitely aren't. You're under arrest for human trafficking, false imprisonment, and about 15 other charges I'll think of while we ride back to Rollins. His deputies moved forward, collecting weapons from Caro and his men. The wounded one was hauled onto a horse, groaning. Caro fought against the handcuffs, still screaming about rights and property and stolen merchandise. The marshal turned back to Marcus. As for you, Holt, technically you're an accomplice. Technically I should arrest you too. Marcus's stomach dropped. Yes, sir. But the marshal's expression softened slightly. I've been doing this job 20 years, and in that time, I've learned that sometimes the law and justice aren't the same thing. What you did, freeing that girl, that was justice. He pulled out a small leather pouch, tossing it to Marcus. It landed in the dust with a metallic clink. What's this? Reward money. We've been trying to catch Caro for months. Your cooperation just closed the case. The marshal swung back onto his horse. Use it to get yourself somewhere new. Start over. And Holt. Sir? Don't take jobs from men like Caro anymore. No, sir, I won't. The marshals rode out, taking Caro and his men with them. Their shouts and protests faded into the distance, swallowed by the vast Wyoming morning. Marcus stood alone in the dried riverbed, holding a pouch of reward money he'd never expected. Around him, the sun continued its rise, painting the world in shades of gold and possibility. He thought about Tallulah, hoped she was safe, hoped she'd made it to her people, hoped that someday someone would tell him she'd survived. But even if he never knew, even if their paths never crossed again, Marcus Holt understood something that would stay with him forever. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past, it was about choosing differently in the present, about remembering at the last possible moment what it meant to be human, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. He picked up the pouch, feeling its weight. Inside was more money than $400, more than he'd made in the last year, enough to start over, enough to build something different, enough to maybe, finally, become the man he used to be. Marcus Holt turned north, following the same direction Tallulah had gone. Not to catch her, she was long gone by now, but because north felt like the right direction, like moving towards something instead of running from it. The iron box sat empty behind him, its door still open. And for the first time in 5 years, Marcus walked with his head up and his conscience clear. If this story reminded you that courage isn't the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it, drop a comment below. Tell me what time you finished reading and what you're taking away from Marcus's choice. Your words matter. Your presence here matters. And if you want more stories like this, stories about ordinary people making extraordinary choices, subscribe, because we're just getting started.